30 Minutes with Ron.
Welcome to 30 Minutes with Ron. I'm your host, James W. Hawk. Tonight's program is about how to be an author with fun and profit. We have with us tonight Ron Gagliardi, who's going to share his vast wisdom and experience on how to be an author for fun and profit. How you doing, Ron?
I'm having a great time. Wish you were here.
Well, I am, sort of, in pandemic sense.
Yes.
Let me. I'm glad to hear you're with us, and I'm glad to hear you're fine. Let me launch into our discussion here, because I'm sure that's really what the people want to hear. What in a person's background qualifies them to write or publish a book?
Well, I can only go in my case, and my case was the desire to be an author from the time I was a little kid. And it helps to have some knowledge about your topic. And if you don't have knowledge about it, research is a very good thing to do. And it's good to have some ideas. And one of the things about, in my case, I always put authors on a pedestal. I thought there's situations where there's people who are and people who aren't in the world. Like there are people who are jugglers and there are people who aren't jugglers. And the world is divided into those two. And there's also people who are authors and people who are not authors. And I wanted to get into the authors group. So by the time I was like in fourth grade, I went, Pueblo Goes to Market. And I actually have the book from fourth grade. That was my first book. And from that point, I had ideas, but I never really got to the point of being an author until I was an adult. And I don't want to go further on this question because I know you have other questions to go on to.
Oh, thanks, Ron. As you know, you can either publish the book, self-publish, or not, or have a publisher publish the book.
Yep.
What is the difference of perception between a published or a self-published book?
Well, I know in my case, when I started finding out something called vanity press, I thought, well, gee, that's kind of a negative statement. And vanity press were those folks who couldn't get a publisher to publish them. And they paid a publishing company who specifically did books for those kind of folks. And they put out their vanity press version, their self-published version. And so the main difference, therefore, is either you can have a publisher and be on a pedestal, or be self-published and not be on quite so high a pedestal.
Okay. Do you have any published or self-published books?
I do. I have some of each. I happen to have them right here, and I will hold them up just quickly. Arcadia Publishing does local history books, and I have this one, and this is a Naugatuck one. I'll move over here. Yep. Okay. And then that was published in '04, and this one is the Cheshire book, Images of America Cheshire, and that was published in 2001. And I self-published Noah's Decenarian Almanac, and I had a printer do about, 50 copies of that. And I did one called Jack and the Quinnipiacs, about an experience I had with a student at Highland School in Cheshire. So those are a couple of each.
Well, you've been busy. What are your memories of your early writing experiences?
Well, when I did Pueblo Goes to Market, I did a couple of small stories within that. I showed it to people. My parents were duly impressed and very proud, of course. But it never went anywhere except into a box that I found many years later. That's basically it. I wanted to be an author. I had tried. I wrote things, since 12th. Well, I wrote things since first grade because I could print a little bit, and I kept on writing through high school and college.
Do you have any honors or awards for your writing?
Well, let's see. There was a local filmmaker who liked a poem I did, and he did a film with my poem in the background, and he gave me an IMDb account, which was kind of an honor to me. But I didn't win a Pulitzer yet, so I have no honors or awards. We should say that filmmaker was you.
I was going to say, I wonder who the filmmaker is.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
All right.
What is your favorite topic or genre to write about?
I love to write about history, as you can tell by the two Arcadia books. I'm a amateur naturalist, lepidopterist. That's a butterfly collector, although I got tired of killing them and I just raise them now. So I like to write about nature, and I enjoy biographies. I'm writing one now about Frank Speck Shea, who was a pitcher for the New York Yankees in 1947 and won 2 World Series games. So I call myself the biography historian, and I'm starting to write biographies for other people besides famous people.
Here's a good one. I relate to this myself. How do you generate ideas for your books and articles?
Okay, well, I'm going to use a word that I made up. My friends don't like me to use it. My family doesn't like me to use it, but I'm going to use it anyway. I have a terminal condition that I call idearrhea, and I just have ideas that keep on flowing. And I get ideas from the newspaper. I get ideas from television. I get ideas just floating out of my own head. It's a constant flow of ideas. That's how I do it.
Ron, do you have any relevant practices that you use when you write?
Well, I like to read about my subject, and I do some extensive research once I pick the subject, and I do lots of rewrites. I think most authors follow those three ideas, and end up with the final product. That's about it. I do have A to Z list, but I'll go with those with the next question or one of the other questions that you have.
Yeah, that's later.
Yeah.
I'd like to jump in here for a second. As you know, I write as well, and
Oh yeah.
one of the things that I got from this fella is that when you're writing, write everything down, everything. He says, and then you go back and you sort out the crap, which I do that. I mean, and the point being is that when your mind is in that flow, get it down on paper. You don't know what's good and what isn't, but get it down on paper. Anyway, can you share your research regarding types of writing that exist?
Well, I have this thing that I call the alphabet, and many people are totally aware of it, but they don't use it the way I do. I write the alphabet vertically down the side of a page, and I try to come up with something for each letter. And so one of my A to Z lists was about the different types of writing. So I got N, which was newsletters. I got B for books, L for limericks, L for lyrics. I got something for almost every one of the letters. So that was one of the ways that I found out all the different types of writing that exist. And therefore, I can just pick whatever ones I want and whatever I need.
What does the role of your vocabulary play in your writing?
Well, it always helps to have a pretty large vocabulary and actually be able to understand and use the words correctly. And when I was a little kid, I used to watch my father do the crossword puzzles. And I said, he's got an amazing vocabulary. I'm going to get me one of those when I'm older. And so I always studied our vocabulary lists at school and tried to remember them as much as I could. So I think it's important to have a pretty good vocabulary. You can say something simply, you can say something a little more expandable, and I think the little more expandable works better.
Okay. Have you encountered or created any writing iniquities?
Oh, uniquities. Oh, my goodness.
Iniquities, sorry.
Yes. Well, I have a form of a limerick poem that's a 5-line poem, and I call them glimericks because I'm hoping that there'll be a glimmer of a smile when the person finishes reading them. And I used to write them for the Cheshire Herald, and I wrote one a week for 7 years. And I also call it public poetry because when people send in letters to the editor, they're often like so long that people don't even want to read them. When people in Cheshire saw my poems, they said, I'm going to get the point of that poem almost instantaneously. And so it helped me to get well known in town, and the Democratic Party even came to me because of it and said, Ron, you have name recognition. It's good in the voting booth. So keep on going with those glimericks.
Okay, good to hear that. Is there a language that you took in high school or college that helps you?
Yes, Latin. I only took 1 year, but it helped me to know what the language was built upon. And it helped me with my own writing. I don't remember a lot of Latin, but it did help me to get the English correctly done.
Okay. The next question you sort of answered, but I'm going to throw it out there just in case you want to elaborate on it. Can you explain how you use the alphabet in your writing?
Well, I'll give you an example, which is what you asked. If I have 5 characters in a children's book, I like to write children's books, and I want to have some kind of an interaction, I go to my A to Z list of that character. So on that A to Z list, I will have is impatient, talks loudly, doesn't like fish. I will have a bunch of different characteristics, and I will weave some of those into the story at that time. So again, I'm using the A to Z list to help me.
Okay. How does goal setting figure into your career as a writer?
Well, my opinion about goal setting fits into just about everything. If you don't have goals, it's hard to achieve them. And so I feel, well, my goals were to become an author. And if I didn't get to do that, I would be a little disappointed, but at least I had a goal that I was shooting for. So goals are very important. And my goal is to win a Pulitzer and to win all kinds of prizes, a Caldecott, or maybe that might be for illustration. I don't know, one of those wonderful awards that librarians give.
Well, I wish you all the luck.
Well, thank you. I may never achieve it, but I'm going to try.
Hey, if you don't try, you won't get it. So
that's right.
That's what you got to do.
That's right.
Are there any groups to join to assist you writing and publishing efforts?
Yes, there are groups for just about every kind of genre that you're thinking about. I'm most familiar with children's books. There's a group called the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. It was founded by Tommy DePaula and Jane Yolen, who are some of the top-notch children's book authors, and he's also an illustrator around. And what it does is it allows groups around the state, and around the whole country, actually, to get together usually once a month, and the artists and the writers critique each other's work. They read or they show, and they give ideas, and they take from what the other people are doing and learn from that. I led one in Hamden, Connecticut for 27 years. And it didn't help me to get any of my children's books published, but it helped other folks who had joined in. So that's one of the ones you can join. I would recommend, if you're going to do children's books, join SCBWI, Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators.
Ron, what is Kirkus and what does it do for authors?
Well, I just recently looked it up. I've been aware of it. A friend of mine is an author, and she paid some money to them to review her book. And I thought, gee, that's kind of strange. If you pay money to a group, they're probably going to do a positive review. But I just looked it up before today's meeting, and I found out that they will do the review. They said for a person who's doing a self-published book, it costs $425. And they will do the review, but they won't release it. I guess they leave it up to the author to release it if they think it's a positive review. So apparently, from what I read today, a Kirkus review is a good thing to have. I guess newspapers and magazines look at these things when they're writing about authors, and they find out if they have a good Kirkus review, then that's a cool thing. They mention it in the articles about them.
As a writer, do you need an agent or an editor?
It helps. It always helps to have other people read your book. Those are like, friends and family and people who are aware of the subject you're writing on. So that's a different kind of an editor than the publishing editor. If you're going to self-publish, you're not going to have an editor other than your friend types. If you do get accepted with a publisher, which is a really best way to go, then they will assign an editor to you, and that person will work with you and get you through what you need to do. I had an editor for both of my Arcadia books, and they set deadlines and stuff. And it turns out I was late on getting the book to their place up in Portland, Maine. And it was an interesting process of not being too happy, and they were not too happy. So I'll go more into it later if we have time.
Yeah, that's one of the upcoming questions, actually. Yeah. All right. So many publishers emphasize your resume. How do you get a robust resume if publishers haven't published you yet?
That's pretty interesting. When I was not a published author, I was faced with the same question that many non-published authors are faced with, and I found a couple of solutions. One of them is you can write for things that are not books. You can write for newsletters. You can write for catalogs. You can write for letters to the editor. And so even though those are not books, they can be included in your resume. One of the people in the SCBWI group that I led found out that there were contests for children's book writers. And so she would even pay the $10 or $20 entry fee to get her books looked at. And so at the end of the contest, they gave reports about the books, or you might have won. So that can go on your resume as well. So that's a way to get published without getting published.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
What will you likely need to anticipate when contacting an agent or a publisher?
Well, they're going to want to know what your background is. They're going to want to know if you have some expertise in the area that you're writing on. The current editor that I have, he's got 2 books of mine and a couple of partners right now. He sent me something that I really wasn't aware of, and this happened a couple of months ago. He said, I want you to write a proposal about your book, and I want you to answer a bunch of questions about the book. And it was like, what is the current topic of it? What kind of writing are you doing? Are there illustrations? And that kind of thing. So that's about it.
Do you have any advice regarding working with editors?
Yes. Be nice. They're going to be rejecting some of what you're writing, and they're going to ask you to make changes. They will also set deadlines for you, and those deadlines should be adhered to. The one that I didn't adhere to with Arcadia, I didn't realize this, but their books are published over in England on some kind of a huge printing press. And there might be like 20 books at a time going on that printing press. And if yours is scheduled to be one of those 20 books and it ain't there on time, they're not happy.
Yeah.
So keep your deadlines good.
I understand that. Are there online programs that will assist you with your writing efforts?
Yes, there are. I only know one personally. It's called Grammarly, and I haven't used it because of my beautiful Latin experience. I didn't need Grammarly, but no, I'm only kidding. I actually recommended that to you. How did that one work for you?
Well, after you got done, I was going to make a comment. That was a really, really great idea. And now I don't consider myself very well versed in writing and that sort of stuff, but I think I'm a cut above normal. So I did. I signed on to Grammarly and I submitted something to them. And I don't remember the number of pages, but it came back with like 100, 200, 300, 400 errors, something like, yeah, I know. I'm going like, whoa, wait a minute. Now, a lot of it had to do with missing commas and punctuations and stuff like that. But they, when you read something, you miss things. You read something, there might be a word missing, but you've read it so many times that your brain sees that missing word anyway.
Right.
Grammarly picks up on that stuff, and it turned out it was very helpful. And yeah, I really like that program a lot. I appreciate that.
Well, I found that going over what you've written a bunch of different times is a good thing to do. And I can tell you that in the Naugatuck book that I showed earlier, there was one error that showed up on the year of someone's birth or something like that, showed up like 10, 20 years later. And on the Cheshire book, I haven't released these yet, but I plan on it. There were quite a few errors. I even had some historians go over the book and they didn't find them. So maybe I should have used Grammarly then. If I had known about it, I probably should have. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there support books to share that should be in every author's library?
Well, I just went to my author's library to check, and I have a bunch of them here. There's dictionaries. There's a handbook on writers for research papers. There's how to write children's books. Negotiating a book contract. That's something that's interesting to have, because you're going to have an attorney probably on the publisher's side offering you a contract, and it's nice to know what they're going to be coming at you with. Let's see, I have the Children's Writers and Illustrators Market. Yeah, I keep on moving in the wrong spot. There we go. There's a whole bunch of them. The thesaurus is good to have. These are things that most authors will have available to them very close to wherever they're writing.
I'd like to, if you let me have a minute here.
You can have two.
2 minutes. I'd like to jump back on that internet thing. obviously, when I grew up as a kid, there was no such thing as the internet. And so anytime you got involved in a project, it was always writing notes down and running off to the library and doing your research there. And it was a very long and drawn out process. So
Right.
we were talking about online programs. There are resources online that are just unbelievable these days, because when I'm sitting and writing something and I'll go, I wonder if that spelling is right. I wonder if this is the right word. Maybe I need to know a little more about this subject before I put this in my story. I go to the internet, and it isn't writing it down and going to the library. It's done right then and there. So I like that.
Well, I have found my cell phone is helpful. I will go to my cell phone and say, Siri, show me the Scrabble word users list of all the words that begin with Q. And all these words come up. It goes like 2 word with Q, 2 letters with Q, 3 letters, 4 letters. There's 517 with 6 letters. I never knew that before. I found that. That's a good thing.
Good thing. Yeah.
Yeah, different words.
Now, here's one that's near and dear to my heart. Who takes care of the media and promotions of your writing and books?
That depends on who publishes it. In Arcadia's case, they would set up book signings for me. In the strangest of all places, Costco, where I had a couple, didn't expect to sell a lot of books there, because hundreds of people are there at a time that aren't from the town and that my book was about, Naugatuck or Cheshire. But I think I sold 10, 12 books on both occasions. So normally you have a signing at a bookstore, and then Arcadia would probably try to get that for me. I haven't had one at Barnes and Noble, although they do have a whole section of Arcadia books at places like that. But if you're self-published, or even if you're published by a publisher, you can get your own book signings, or you can get your own interviews in newspapers and on television. You can just send out press releases. And that's basically telling the folks who are in charge there, the assignment editor, that's a good person to know that there's a title of that in TV stations. If you send information about your book, and if they find it interesting, you can get some publicity that way.
That's good to know. That promoting and selling, that's probably harder than writing the book.
It's fun.
When we opened up this session, I had 2 quotes that I found in regard to writing books and that sort of thing. Do you have any quotes that you'd like to share?
Let's see. I don't really have any relating to books. I have some relating to life, like if it ain't fun, don't do it. And I came across one that I've said for years. I'm the happiest person I know. So now I have an acronym for that, IFPIC. So it's kind of a quote. There's another thing. I have a philosophy of life, OPAO, only positivity in and out. Those are the quotes that I sometimes use. I really have any regarding books and publishing.
Well, I thought I'd give you a shot at it at least.
Hey, why not?
How does a person zoom in on the route of becoming a published author?
I guess it takes some concentration. One of the places that I find ideas for books and for proposals is in the New Haven Register. And so I get the New Haven Register in the morning and I place it on the floor in our family room. I like to work on the floor because it makes me feel good as a 73-year-old that I can actually get up from the floor. And so I like working on the floor. So I spread the paper out, I read through it. Usually takes about a half hour to read. I'm a speed reader. I can read a lot faster than that, but I look closely. And then after I find the 6 or 8 things that I'm interested in, I cut them out. I put the date on them. I put them in files later, and I go back and use them. So I find that's one of the finest ways that I can get ideas, going through the New Haven Register.
Good. Do you have any advice for would-be authors that hasn't already been covered during our discussion?
Let's see. I think it's a good idea to think of yourself as an author. I mean, if you don't think of yourself as that, you're probably not going to think you're really going to get to be that. Authoring is an interesting occupation. It's fun to get your first royalty check. It's interesting to put on your taxes that you are an author, and it helps in your own mind to see you as an author, see yourself as an author. So I think seeing you in your own mind as that position, that's a good thing.
Okay. Ron, that's all. You've gone through my whole list of questions.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything else you want to add before I close this?
Well, let's see. Do we have time for my Arcadia story?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
All right, I'll make it quick.
Yeah.
I went up there to deliver the manuscript and the photos. I actually was on a disc. And I thought I was almost ready to have it handed in. I explained that I had a few things to type while I was there. And the editor said, no, you're going to be here for a while. They basically chained me to a computer for 3 days, and they were not happy. But it turned out that it was beneficial for me because they showed me what they thought was going to be the cover. And what they do for their authors is they say, submit 10 photos that you think would be a good cover, which I did. They picked one that was not one of those 10. And it looked like a bunch of people at a funeral standing in front of a factory, all wearing black. And I said, but no, I don't like that. But I didn't say it to them. When I got back to the hotel, I explained to my wife on the phone that this had happened. I said, but I felt a little bad because they're already upset with me. I don't want to bring it up. She said, if you feel strongly about it, you should bring it up. So I did. They showed the one that I thought was going to be the cover. They brought it around to the office, and it eventually ended up being the cover. So if I hadn't been so late, it would have been such a horrible, nobody would have bought the book.
Well, thanks for that story. And,
Oh, yeah.
And thank you for being the guest today, for sharing your experience and your wisdom and knowledge. And hopefully it's helpful to people that are listening to this program. And I'd also like to mention the fact that Ron is the normal host for 30 Minutes with Ron. Ron has done many of these programs, and you can find them on YouTube by searching YouTube for 30 Minutes with Ron. Lots of interesting stories, lots of interesting people. Thank you for joining us, and please come back for future episodes. Thank you very much, and good night.
I'll be back. I hope.
You will. Absolutely.